Yeah, we happy. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Roger Daniel for the Magnificent World of Toys, and today is actually a pretty special show. You guys may recall around this time last year I did our end of the year special, but today what makes it even more special is that I have my friend here, Travis, also known as At the Enemy Planet. This year in special actually serves as a episode to go back and look at the year, look at some of the collectors and profiles and artists and stuff that we covered, as well as the shops we visited. And as we know, this year has been pretty unprecedented. I think that's been the popular word. But yeah, so Travis, thanks for joining me, man.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. And yeah, this video, it's definitely not the video that you did last year. But this year is nothing like last year. So
hello folks, Roger Daniel here for the Magnificent World of Toys. I am here outside of Mike Martinez's Toy Depot here on this lovely Saturday morning here in Southern California. So he's hosting these pop-up shops at his warehouse, which is normally a Halloween store. And what he does is he invites vendors from all over Southern California, I mean basically from wherever, as well as collectors and anyone who wants to come and sell their stuff to basically come out here and sell their stuff. So I guess without further ado, let's go see what we can find here.
You asked me to, maybe chip in on this year-end wrap-up video, and I kind of said, well, why don't you let me interview you? You always do the interviewing. Like, why don't we flip the table here and kind of get your insight into the channel that way? And so I've got a number of questions to ask, and some of those will refer to specific videos that we've done this year. Others will just kind of be about the channel itself. Now, you've not heard any of these questions, so you're going to be in the hot seat today. You ready?
Yeah, definitely, man.
Great. So as we mentioned, 2020's been a little bit of a different year. In your first video of the year of 2020, you said, quote, 2020 is looking really good. So far, so good. About that. You want to change your opinion?
Well, I mean, because I started off well. I picked up a lot of really cool toys last year. I started meeting a lot of really cool people, and things were really looking up. I mean, the channel had really just started taking flight. I was on the brink of cracking 1,000 subscribers, and I was really happy. I mean, I was producing a lot of really cool things. A lot of my ideas, were coming to fruition, and I was in a real happy place, because when I started this, I wasn't sure how far I was going to take it. I figured, maybe I'll do 2-3 videos and it wouldn't last. But then, it really just started kicking up, and, it's just, had a lot of really good people that I interviewed that first year, and that really made the channel as well and helped it grow. And so it was just really fantastic. And like I said, things were looking up, and I had a lot of really good things planned, and a lot of folks who I wanted to profile since I started the channel had already just kind of signed on, and I was just really positive. I was just really excited about what was to come in 2020.
And then all that had to go out the window. Like, we got some in. I think we worked that weekend right before everything shut down. I remember we had lunch afterwards, and it was already at the point of feeling like, should we be eating in public? Is this is it safe for other people to touch our food? There was so much we didn't understand, didn't know at that point. You talk about how the channel, you had grown it to it was heading in the direction you wanted it to go. You had a lot lined up. COVID tossed that out the window, right? So what were the challenges in deciding to press forward? Because suddenly we couldn't do the normal routine of going into a stranger's apartment and talking for several hours, right? That was off the table. But so you could have said, well, I can't do my channel anymore. Let me just stop until we're over this. Or I can reformulate. I can come up with some other idea. So what were the challenges of trying to press forward?
All right. Looks like we are live. Well, hey, all right, let's start over. All right.
That was out of the system.
Yeah, I'll just keep rolling. I guess first and foremost, well, yeah, this channel was really, I mean, it wasn't really meant to be too much about me. It was just kind of, let's go inside, let's meet these collectors, let's go visit these shops, let's meet these artists. It was like, I couldn't produce that kind of content anymore. I couldn't go out and do a nice little documentary on an artist. The camera was now focused on me. And at times it was like very hard trying to come up with content. Maybe I can hit a shop or two, but you know, I had to really adapt, think hard real quick. Like, well, I need to keep content going. I mean, I had committed to doing a video once a week, every Monday night, 5 o'clock, you go to the Magnificent World of Toys and you go watch a new video.
And was that kind of like what you originally saw the channel as being, like in its entirety at the beginning, was profiles of collectors and makers and all that?
The channel was created to create sort of like a network in both ways, like as a network television station. I mean, if this were a network television station about toys, this is everything I would want to see in it. But at the same time, network in the way where, you know, people can learn about a new artist that they never knew. People can learn about somebody who collects something they do. And then not only that, they can learn from these collectors, because, you know, one thing that I've known and one thing that I have found beneficial about doing this channels is that I learn a lot from other collectors. And because there's times where you know, you feel, well, am I normal? Am I normal for doing this? Am I the only person on earth that likes this? And then you find that you're not. And then, you know, when you know that there's many other people out there like you or similar to you, or someone that interests you that you never knew existed, I mean, that kind of brings a little bit of you know, I guess a little bit of joy, or also
it's that camaraderie, it's that,
and
that connection.
Exactly, and gives you sort of like a sense of belonging. Because one thing that I know is that there's a lot of similarities and things that we all have. And it's interesting because it's like you meet these adults and then you're like, wow, you like this too? And then you find it hard to believe, because chances are your whole life you've been surrounded with people that aren't like that. But, you know, you never know. There's maybe somebody in the other town. There could be somebody right next door to your house who is totally into what you're into. Basically, you're not alone in what you do and what you collect.
And, you know, you spoke about, you know, what you wanted to do with the channel in terms of helping to build a network, not just for yourself, but to help other people realize, oh, I'm part of a network. Like, there are other people out there who are into what I'm into. We are kind of seeing professional versions of that starting to hit, you know, I won't say mainstream, but mainstream outlets. One of the last ones that we got to do this year was our friend of the channel, Rich Myurick. He was a producer on The Toys That Made Us on Netflix. So there is kind of like suddenly this realization that maybe there is a broader audience out there. When you see that kind of programming that's on a platform like Netflix, do you look at that and think, oh, that's where I want to take the channel? Like, that's the dream? Or is the type of content that you want to be making, the short form stuff, is YouTube exactly where the channel needs to be?
I mean, I think it would be great to see it elevate or have a life outside of YouTube. I mean, like I said, it's sort of like the television channel that I would like to see. I don't know if I'd ever be as successful doing this to the extent where I'd actually be able to make a cable television channel or a network television channel or something like that. I mean, you'd have to put millions and millions of dollars. You'd have to get some serious investors to invest money. I don't have that kind of money. But still, it's like, I would love to see it at that level. Every individual artist, every individual creator, every individual collector, they all have a story. A lot of people do it to compensate for something, but then, you know, some people just do it because they like it. But then there's also collectors who collect and then they set up their collections a certain way. Or there's these artists that only make a certain type of toy. And I want to know why. It's just kind of like, what inspired you? What the hell made you just want to decide you're going to leave everything behind and start making toys? And that's one of the things that kind of fascinated me about Barbarian Rage, Scott Cherry.
Ever since I was 5 years old, I've been drawing, doing comics. Later on, I started painting and sculpting in high school, and I specialize in making toys now, but there's so much that goes into that. Even a bootleg toy will involve a small amount of sculpture. If I want to do an original toy, you have to sculpt it. That involves design sketch, all the way up to package design. Everything has to come together. I'm Scott Cherry, better known as Barbarian Rage, and I make toys. I'm a painter, I'm a sculptor, a bootlegger, some people call it.
I found it amazing how this guy just literally, he's tried all kinds of things throughout his life. He just kind of threw it all out the window and said, you know what, I'm going to make freaking toys, and I'm going to make the toys I want. And he did it, and he's been doing it. He's been doing pretty well at it. He just launched his comic book. I've always wanted to do a comic book. He literally started a Kickstarter campaign, and within months, he cranked it out. There's so many people like that out there, and I think a lot of people can draw inspiration from these folks. But at the same time, for all you know, there could be like a pool of people out there who really love that kind of stuff and are going to support this guy for the rest of their life or for as long as they can. And my thing is that if I can bring people, or if I can shine the spotlight on some of these folks and help them out, even if it's this much, I'm a happy man.
Like how many cat slayers do you have?
Cat slayer?
Yeah.
I got 4 in boxes now and 1 loose one. Before I used to have 7. I used to have 4 in boxes and 3 loose ones. But I traded or sold them. This is my first one that I ever got. This cat there. From there I started buying more and more. I'm just consider this one. I collect all vintage stuff. Mostly Thundercats, He-Man. I've been collecting vintage toys for 7 years. I want to start collecting because memories from my childhood.
You started to get into this, but each person that you're highlighting, that you're profiling, even if there's a common interest that kind of spreads amongst all of them, do you find that there's a lot that you're learning about these different aspects of the action figure or toy collecting world? For example, the video that you did with Jose Ledesma, a couple of things that he brought out, prototypes and hard copies. Is that something you knew much about going into that video, or was this something you learned a little bit about from what he collects?
I had never seen anything like a prototype, much less of Thundercats figures.
That was impressive.
Like out in the wild or in anybody's collection. I didn't even know that was possible. But, there's other things in his collection, honestly, that were just really, he had a lot of rare stuff. And this guy was like the real deal. It was just fantastic seeing what he had. And yeah, I was blown away by seeing the prototypes. His prototype collection has increased. He basically had like maybe about one little section of a Detolf with prototypes. Now he has practically a whole, and we're talking within a 9-8 month period. Now he has a whole Detolf of pure prototypes from Thundercats and other 80s properties. And it's just, I just think it's fantastic. You look at the rest of his collection, and this guy has stuff that most of us, normal collectors, will probably never ever have in their lifetime.
Or even see.
Yeah, or even have a chance to obtain in their lifetime. And, he's highly regarded within the world of collecting as it relates to Masters of the Universe, 80s, vintage, and stuff like that. And it's funny because by looking at him, you'll never think it. I was very, very impressed by his collection. And it was funny because we could barely, at that time, he was kind of like in a transitional period, and we could barely get around. I'm like nearly tripping over like vehicles and stuff like that. One thing I learned is I think I know where all that cool stuff goes when it hits eBay. Yeah, I think that's what I learned from
Ends
Joe
up in
Ledesma.
one home, yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Hello folks, Roger Daniel here for the Magnificent World of Toys. Today I have a short video for you. This is a video regarding a project that I worked on. It was actually a figure that a friend of mine asked me to build for him, and it's none other than this Zuni fetish doll from the movie trilogy of terror.
Well, aside from those, interview or profile videos, as you mentioned, you've also had to figure out what else can I do to fill this space? Since I can't go visit people, what are some other ways that I can still put out content? And some of the ones that you chose to do this year focus on your own customs. The space creature behind you there, the pug glue custom, maybe we can see it up behind over here. I think you kind of hinted at this, but do you enjoy doing those kinds of videos? Are they more like out of necessity, like in your mind they're filler? And have you thought about doing more like how-to or instructional videos, since you're an artist as well?
I enjoy doing the work. Documenting it, not so much. It is quite a challenge. I have to decide, well, what's more important, that I do a good job on this custom or film it right? The important part is to make sure that whatever I'm working on comes out perfect. And then the filming, I'll worry about that later. I do enjoy doing those videos. I do enjoy kind of looking back at them. And then, I enjoy it and I don't, because then I look back and I'm like, I should have done this and I should have done that. But, it's like if I focus on what I should have done and shouldn't have done, I don't end up doing anything. If I can develop a science on how to do things the right way, there's a couple things here and there that I think I can do, or I could develop a science, kind of easy DIY stuff. But then when it comes to the more complex stuff, it's very difficult because I don't know how I'm going to approach it. If I could come up with a good science of how to film it, and at the same time, make it like an easy step-by-step process of whatever it is I'm doing, then yeah, I would definitely love to do more.
After decades of peace, a new threat emerges, igniting a new war for Animatron. From the deepest, darkest realms of the planet, the clan of fiends surfaces in an effort to control Animatron's natural resources. Tentaclaw is ready to grip and snap at his opponents, while Skull at Arms leads the way. As Retinoid observes the terrain, what the clan of fiends fail to realize is that the forces of Animatron see it all. Retinoid uses his iron fist to disrupt the plans of his adversaries, but Skull at Arms strikes first. Retinoid acts swiftly by raising the Moonstar of MAGWOT, summoning his ally Wolfstar, the ultimate beast. Wolfstar pounces on his adversaries and swiftly neutralizes the threat. The planet of Animatron is safe once again. Join the fight for Animatron. Figures sold separately, only from MAGWOT.
There's another aspect of the videos that you make that I think is equally as creative, and they're one of my favorites, and that's the Animatron vintage style toy commercials. Basically, you customize some action figures and then you make a commercial for them as if it was an 80s toy commercial, with yourself doing voiceovers and things like that. Do you like making those, and are there plans for more, and what are the challenges that go into those? Because that's a wholly different subset of skills that you have to put together just to bring those script writing and customizing, and they're completely different from everything else that you do.
Yeah, I definitely want to do more. Most of the time, what holds me back with that is, well, the figures aren't ready, or because you have to finish the figures before you do the actual commercial.
Are you coming up with the plot line for these while you're working on them, or is it you finish them all and say, okay, what do I have ready? Let me put a storyline together.
Yeah, sometimes I just wing it, and I'm just like, I create the character. I basically look at my parts bin and I say, well, this eyeball will look great on top of this figure or whatever, or sometimes I'll just sculpt the head from scratch or whatever, and then it's funny. It's like after the figure's done, I'll look at it and then I'll come up with the name. And so sometimes the name is better than the figure itself, or vice versa. And so yeah, it's like And then I just come up with a very generic, very Mickey Mouse script, and then I just go from there. And most of the time I try not to, because commercials are 30 seconds, 20 seconds long.
And it still has to be the 3-act structure. You have to introduce your characters, the heroes have to be losing, and then they have to come back and win. Or we're left on a cliffhanger. Do they win?
Exactly. And then that's the thing, is the idea is to leave it on a cliffhanger, but then also it's like you got to be able to kind of have some kind of perception. Like you got to know that, okay, this story is going to continue, but how? And so it's fun, but it's a chore, setting up backgrounds, creating some kind of diorama and stuff. I mean, I've been using the same old piece of crap diorama I built for it from the beginning. It gets a little hard. I got a little discouraged after seeing, there was a guy who was coming out and he's been doing these really cool stop motion 80s style commercials with the Masters of the Universe origin. And I got a little bummed. I'm like, man, that's so much better than what I do. But then I got to thinking, well, that's his style. I have my own style. And then not only that, I still have a slate of characters, which I have not made the commercial yet for. I'm hoping to do it. It's just, but this one's going to be unique. This one's actually going to be, because this latest wave is kind of very Japanese influenced and inspired, like Japanese kaiju and 60s Japanese and 70s, like kind of sci-fi TV series. And so it's basically all a matter of coming up with the script. I got a couple of friends that, a friend of mine who may be able to translate it. She's going to translate it. And this one's going to be entirely in Japanese. And I'm going to come up with a nice, crazy kind of soundtrack, like an eerie kind of, because if you look at a lot of those early like 70s and 80s like Japanese toy commercials, they got like this eerie like shrieking like music,
right? But then it was offset by the little kids who were just over the moon about this, right?
Yeah. And so I'm excited. I have to at least, I don't want to give up. I want to at least finish that one first. And I don't know, who knows? It's like, the only thing is that it just hasn't taken off as well as I wanted it to. And it's a little more discouraging now because it's like people see, well, they don't move like this guy's video. But still, it's like, I think, every now and then when I finish the figures, I'm just going to screw it. I'm just going to make them anyway, because that's one of the things that I promised when I started this channel. So I think it would be a disservice to my viewers and like individuals like you who appreciate it to stop doing it.
Well, for me, it's not about you mentioned the stop motion stuff, and that's a completely different focus in my mind. Like what I like about these retro toy commercials is how much they allude to and are an homage to those G.I. Joe and He-Man commercials, from the 80s, where it was just kids playing and I knocked over a wall of blocks and like that was it. And
plastic cups.
Right, exactly. And there's just an element of fun to that. And I think that's what a lot of collectors, there's still that element of, what's just fun. When the few that you and I got to do before everything kind of shut down, and maybe this was just me, but I'm curious, the act of entering someone's home and talking to them about their collection, seeing what they have in their detolfs, all that. For me, it feels very similar to being 7 years old, 8 years old, and you're going over to your friend's house and you're seeing what new toys they got for Christmas, and you don't have that one. And how much envy do you have to deal with when you're documenting?
It's a long list, and I actually did a video. I went back and I looked back at every collector that I profiled, and I chose one piece from every collector's collection that I liked, and it was I called it the toys that amazed me. Oh boy, there's just so many really cool things. And it's funny because after doing the video and I was looking, and then I skimmed through the footage, I'm like, how did I forget that? I remember that was so cool. Like, there's a guy who lives, nearby me, Saul Hurtado. He had so many great things. Goes out and finds all kinds of antiques and relics and stuff. He had like a sarcophagus, in his house. Also Creature Kid, Adam Doherty.
His place definitely, it felt like a 19th century explorer who just came back from Borneo, and this is what he brought back with him.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That was the cool thing about, Adam Doherty and Saul Hurtado. It looked like the type of stuff that Indiana Jones would have in his house or in his study or whatever. Yeah, all authentic. Incredible. And of course there was a lot of vintage collectors who had just amazing things. Let's go back to Joe Ledesma. I wish I had a Bengali from like Thundercats. It's been like, it's kind of like, I guess, my unicorn figure or whatever. My grail that I'd like to have. And he had them carded. He had like a few of them carded, and he had some loose ones. And then he wouldn't sell me any. But anyway, that's but
there's the envy I was looking for.
Yeah. But then also there was, Rich Merrick. He had so many cool things too, like the Mighty Crusaders. I used to love those things. You know why? Because my parents, my father, for us, it wasn't, let's go to Toys R Us, let's go to Sears, let's go to Fedco. No, we're going to Pick and Save. And so many times all you saw at Pick and Save was Mighty Crusaders.
I collect a wide range of vintage toys. I think where my heart really lies in is always been kind of the more obscure, the oddball stuff, like the weirdo toys, the things that maybe weren't on every toy shelf back in like the 70s and 80s, but somehow found their way into enough hands that there's a fondness for it. And inexplicably, I had a decent amount of those growing up, and those are always kind of the things that I always search out for the most. But at the same time, I do also love some of the absolute icons of 80s toys like Superpowers, Masters of the Universe, Thundercats, and whatnot. I think a lot of my collecting is a way to hold on to years that I was awfully fond of, and I think that's probably not an exception. I think a lot of people collect vintage toys because they are a physical representation of a time in their lives of unbridled creativity and inspiration. For me personally, holding on to that kind of creativity and whimsy and inspiration is important to my line of work. It's kind of like bringing those two worlds together. My collection is an extension of that.
Now my collection comprises of little relics of all of these folks that I've covered, like soft vinyl. That's one thing, the last thing on earth I thought I'd ever be collecting. But then after seeing the collections of Isaac Ramos and Clear with Guts, Carl, I was like, wow. I was like so blown away. I couldn't believe there was so much of it. The colors, the forms, just everything. Those things were just like amazing. And now it's nothing compared to their collection, but I do have a couple little soft vinyl pieces here and there. And I hope to get more eventually. It's just a little more difficult to obtain.
Well, that's what I think is fun about the channel, though, is how much it potentially introduces viewers to something that they haven't experienced before, right? You're not focused on just 1/6 scale. You're not focused on just vintage. You kind of open a lot of people's eyes up to other things that they don't collect. Maybe it's a world they're almost completely unfamiliar with. And so it does give that opportunity to explore a side of collecting, and that's what we all have in common with it, but it opens up that door to, I didn't even know this existed. And maybe somebody goes down that rabbit hole and they start, a new collection themselves. So it definitely is, it's that exploration, idea that it's something new and something unfamiliar, and it's easy to sometimes stagnate on what you collect, and maybe you have everything except for the top level grails. And I think when you're a collector, you're not always focused on the aspect of just owning everything that's within your wheelhouse. It's once you've gotten most of what you want, okay, what's next? There is an element of it is the act of collecting something that you don't already have. And so that's where sometimes these doors open and you find something new you didn't know existed, and that can be incredibly exciting to look at a whole new list of things to start collecting.
Exactly. And it's great to see that too, is that, you see people whose tastes expand, and especially it's even better when folks, for example, they discover an artist. like somebody like just making toys out of their garage, like Barbarian Rage, or somebody just making toys just out of their apartment, like Creature Kid, Adam Doherty, and then they see like, wow, this guy made that. I mean, like, you know, let's talk about like Adam Doherty, his Puggloo. I mean, gosh, everybody loves Puggloo, and it's great to introduce people to some of, you know, who wouldn't have known otherwise, you know, to some of these folks' work.
You meet a lot of people in various aspects of the collecting and making. You know, it's kind of the toy world, right? Regardless of how you fit into it, it's the toy world. How's your relationship with that community changed as the channel has grown? Does anybody ever recognize you from the channel and say hi, like, oh, I don't know you, but I know the channel? Do you ever have people asking you to be featured in a video?
I can't recall like anyone really asking me to be featured, because one thing you'll find is that for the most part some folks are kind of antisocial, and it's just like but it's interesting because you find also that deep inside some of these folks really want to share it. Some of these people really want to do it, and you know, and so yeah, I've had people decline. You know, I've asked, I normally ask people, like I follow people on social media, and that's the way I normally do it. Like sometimes some people will recommend someone, and I'll go and I'll ask them, hey, are you up for it? And you know, either they'll say yes or no. Most people say yes.
It's kind of a leapfrog oftentimes, right? Like you profile somebody who introduces you to somebody else, who introduces you to somebody else.
Exactly, and it's worked that way for the most part. But yeah, it's hard. And then, but the good thing is that most of the time, you know, people don't realize that, you know, they'll see their friend and like, oh, you did that video for that guy? Oh, okay, that was you. Okay, yeah, I will definitely do it. Yeah, of course, you know, I would love to do that. Come on down or whatever. And so, yeah, it's like sometimes it happens that way. And, you know, but it's great because, yeah, I have met a lot of great people. And, yeah, sometimes I'll be out there and people, hey, you know, Magnificent World of Toys. And sometimes I'll be out there and, you know, also there's a lot of people who are really cool. There's like, you know, a couple vendors out there. Every time they see me, they just like give me stuff. And I'm like, I feel bad. I'm like, oh, you know, they just, I guess, love the content. That's their way of gesture of telling me, hey, man, like, you know, and you know, it's not like they give me crap either. It's like they'll give me something really cool. Like, I'm like, you know, a friend of mine named Knuckleheads Collectibles, every time he sees me, he'll give me like an issue of the Savage Sword of Conan because he knows I love Conan and comic books. And then the other day, he gave me like this really cool, like, wrestling ring. You know, you have other people, you know, of course, there's always negative, you know, folks, and just you get negative vibes from folks or whatever. And it's like, for example, one of the things that probably the more difficult is doing, like, let's say something for someone like who has competition, right? Or just like doing like the shops. Like, you know, I'm always concerned when I do those like videos about shops, and because, you know, I know these folks are just kind of like competing for the same dime. And, you know, for the most part, the majority of the vendors that I featured are cool, but others not so much. My intention isn't to create division or animosity among people. It's good for people to have options as well. I kind of hate to go into it, but it's sort of one of the things that, like I said, it's just at times when I do like videos for like shops and stuff, I'm like, man, I start thinking about all the other shops that I did. And I'm just like, did I do a good thing or did I do a bad thing? And then it's like, I mean, you just never know. And yeah, certainly it's like, you know, every now and then, you know, it's some folks kind of rub me the wrong way. And I just don't know why. But then, you know, let's go back to like the fact that some collectors, sometimes it's not, I don't think it's anything against me. It's just that I think some people sometimes are just a bit antisocial. And because, yeah, it's like there's been times where I've been at shows and stuff and I know people very well. And then it's like we walk right past each other and they kind of do the, you know, like, I hope this guy doesn't see me and stop me. Maybe they're just not in the mood to talk. Maybe
all right, I won't
like,
do that anymore. No, I promise.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's like that awkward, you know, like where you walk back.
I'm going to do that next time we run into each other.
And, you know, I mean, like I said, so it hurts sometimes. I don't take it too personal, you know, and like I said, but you just move on. Because it's like, it's funny, because then, you know, that happens one day, and then the next day this person's like, They're talking your ear off, at a show or whatever. And so.
Yeah. So among all the vastly different people that you featured on the channel with their different focuses and passions, some are, you're focusing just on their collection, their collecting habits. Others are makers, so you're focusing on the artwork that they're making that is usually toy related, but maybe not always. Mortar Heads, for example, is a mask maker. He's a toy collector, but his video wasn't about the toys in his collection. So with all of that, what would you say is the one constant that permeates the hobby and ties the channel together? What is it that makes these vastly different types of people and what they do and the videos about them the world of toys that we're focusing on?
Well, you said it right there. I mean, it's basically toys. I mean, in many of these artist profiles, the focus is not so much on the toys, but on their art. But here's the thing is that I can't recall an artist that I've done who hasn't had a toy collection.
Who wasn't probably inspired by toys.
Inspired by toys. And then toys is what really brings us together and draws inspiration to most of these folks.
The things I create and the things I collect, actually, I'll have a real nostalgic connection for me. Vintage Star Wars figures like Walrus Man and Hammerhead and Greedo. All those toys were things that I loved as a kid and played with them, for years and years. And I think also taking a lot of those things that I liked as a kid and turning them into masks is just something new for those other people out there that have connections to those items. And when they see that, they're like, oh, I gotta have that, I want that in my life. Kind of the same reason why I made it, because I wanted it to exist. So I started making them.
Mortar Heads, I mean, he's a mask maker. Naturally, he's going to have a nice collection of masks, and then also a big Star Wars fan. I mean, all his masks are very Star Wars inspired. He's the only guy on Earth that has more than 5 Walrus Man figures. There was Walrus Man figures like all over his workspace, which was cool, but he had a lot of other really cool like Star Wars figures and stuff because that was his inspiration.
You could still get the sense of what it was that captured his imagination as a kid, and even if it's different than what captures his imagination now, there's still that passion coming out of trying to replicate the feelings that he got from those things as a kid.
Exactly. And so, I mean, to answer your question, the short answer is like where it all culminates and comes together is basically toys. Magnificent world of toys. That was corny as hell, but yeah.
Is there one particular video that you were most proud of this year, that when all was said and done, you thought, this was good content? I am glad I put this out.
Anything that didn't have me in it. No, actually, well, no, I think I loved. Definitely
those were my favorites too.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely loved Adam Doherty's Creature Kid. Also, Rich Merrick. I mean, I thought that was great. I think all of my collector profiles this year were just really, really fantastic. I did a video titled 1/6 Scale Is It For You?
Being a fan of samurai cinema, I discovered a line of action figures from a manufacturer known as Alfrex. They released what I thought at the time was 1/6 scale action figures. My first 1/6 scale action figure was Eureka Gargarin from a line known as The Joint. Fast forward a few years later, in the hunt for Alfrex figures, I discovered Echo Base Toys, where I bought my first 1/6 scale figures to Kit Bash. After a trip to Frankenstein Collectible Show, I'd soon discover that there was a huge movement brewing of 1/6 scale kit bashing culture of cult as well as mainstream characters. I began buying and hoarding whatever 1/6 scale parts I could get my hands on, basically to practice making my own figures as well as taking pictures. I'd soon move on to box figures, and the kit bashing frenzy would become something I'd put aside until my skills in creating 1/6 scale figures would improve. So that's the short story of how and why I began collecting 1/6 scale. I'd say it's mostly the fact that these figures are customizable and it really lends itself to hours of fun. However, that may not be the reason why you'd like it. hence 1/6 scale. Is it for you?
I remember when I launched it, maybe a couple hundred views, and then just kind of like recently, I mean, it just started to blow up. I mean, it's like, I mean, we're talking, I mean, it's in the thousands of views now, and a lot of people have kind of complimented me on that video, and they've learned so much about 1/6 scale collecting. And it's funny because I look back and I'm like, oh, I forgot this, I forgot that, and I'm like, man, nobody knows about these lines anymore. But you know, I'm kind of proud of that one because it was one that I had been wanting to do since the inception of the channel. I just didn't know how to do it. And then, you know, because of the circumstances of COVID, I was like, well, you know what? If there's a time to do it, then it's now, because I need to come up with content. And I kind of like put it together as best I could. And it's done very well. And so, like I said, I'm glad that, you know, a lot of people, because you know what? 1/6 scale, it's like a very dark, deep rabbit hole. And it's like, you know, it's one you don't want to traverse without really knowing how to navigate, you know, without a flashlight, because, you know, it could go south real fast, real quick. You could find yourself spending a lot of money on something you are not happy with, or that you didn't know how to handle, and
deciding halfway through to try to complete a line or something is a expensive undertaking.
Exactly. And then it's like you'll find something, if you don't know how to handle it properly and you break it and then you want to sell it, you are not going to get what you paid for that, if you get anything at all. And then just, you know, I thought it was something important that I felt that I needed to put out. And, you know, I was a little bit critical about some of the bigger, like, manufacturers of 1/6 scale. But then also, you know, there's a very controversial area in the 1/6 collecting market, you know, as it relates to some of these companies that are kind of creating unlicensed figures and stuff like that. It's like, if the bigger companies aren't offering them, you know, I mean, you know, it's really up to you, you know, whether you want to get that kind of stuff or not. But, you know, I think that 1/6 scale video was one of the ones that I'm most proud of, that it wasn't about another collector, because of its response, the positive response that it's gotten. But also, like I said, I think all of our collectors were pretty great, especially the ones you were involved with. Those were, yeah. And let's say if you divide it between the profiles of collectors and artists, I probably am more proud of the artists' videos, because I actually was able to capture them doing their thing. Like Mortarheads, I love Chewbacca, and then just seeing him, I mean, he's like over there just kind of like carving away at this massive Chewbacca like statue. And then it was great because at that time I had just gotten my Sony camera, and it has incredible like slow motion capabilities, and I'm like, I want to capture as much of this in high definition.
You like watching the artists in action, like that's what...
Exactly. And it was just kind of like, when I look back at those clips, and I just love looking at the raw footage alone, you know, I love the way I captured it, but then at the same time, just I love how inspired I left after capturing
There it is.
But also, as you know, Travis, you know, Daniel travels with us, and the doors that these were able to open for Daniel, and they inspired him as well. And it's like, I mean, there's nothing more rewarding than coming home and your son's excited. Hey, Dad, can I borrow some of your clay? Can I borrow some of your paint? Can I borrow some of your stuff? And he sits down and he starts doing this stuff. I mean, and Daniel, he's at the age where most of the kids his age, you know, TikTok, you know, they're just doing stupid things on their phone. But Daniel is like, you know, that's like background noise to him. And he just wants to come home. And these folks have gone on and they've inspired him, and it helps keep his head out of the, forgive my language, but the bullshit. And like I said, and then he holds these artists, and these are folks that he's never met in his life, and now he's met them, and he holds them in high regard as well. And the fact that they've allowed us to come in, they've allowed him, you, myself, and let us capture them doing what they do best. I mean, that's just remarkable. And that's part of the reason, that's what makes me proud of those videos, because I was able to, maybe I didn't capture it as great as I would have, but the fact that I captured it and the fact that they allowed us to do it, that makes me proud. And I did the best I could under the circumstances, and that's that.
So the channel will not be moving to TikTok anytime soon, is what I'm hearing.
No, we won't be doing any TikToks. Not unless you're no, we won't be doing any TikTok content anytime soon.
So as we're filming this, literally, today as we're filming this. The COVID vaccine has just started deploying around the country, trying to bring things back to normal, but it still feels like we're, a good number of months away from that. With that in mind, what do you currently have planned, and what are your hopes for the channel in 2021?
To get back out there. Travis, you and I mean, like I said, it's been an honor doing this with you. You like I said, you bring out a lot of great things, things that I don't think about. You're kind of like an extension to my brain when we go out and we do these profiles. And like I said, we had some good stuff lined up. What I'm looking forward to is to go back out there and do more collector and artist profiles. There's so much more out there to capture. I think I could go on doing this for the rest of my life if I lived another maybe 70 years or so, and have something new and exciting to capture every week, because there's so many awesome collections out there. There's so many awesome artists out there, and that's what I just can't wait to go back and do. But not only that, I want to start traveling the States. I want to start traveling the world to do this. Imagine us catching a flight, a red-eye to Japan. We're about to spend 2 weeks in Japan. We're going to shop. We're going to capture artists. We're going to capture collectors. That's what I want to do. I actually had a Japan trip planned for this year, which I had to postpone.
Yep.
And, and who knows when we'll be able to do that. But that's probably the first thing I want to do is hit Japan. I want to shop. I want to do collector profiles. And I want to get this channel back to where it's supposed to be. And just basically making it a channel, I mean, in a way, by collectors and artists, for collectors and artists.
If someone thinks they might like to be featured on the channel, or they have someone to recommend that they think would be a good feature for the channel, what are you looking for that determines a quality video? And what's the best way to reach you? Is it via the YouTube? Is it your Instagram? Is it email? How do people let you know that they've got the perfect collector or maker for the channel?
Well, people can always reach me through Instagram. They could reach me through the YouTube channel. I'd say Instagram's probably the better platform because I'm constantly on there. What I'm normally looking for is, I don't care if you have Beanie Babies. If you have a really cool way of displaying those Beanie Babies, if you have an incredible story, then I want to feature you.
Now you tell me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, are you going to pull them out of the garage now? Can I finally do yours?
Let me call my mom
Can
real
I
quick.
finally do your profile, Travis? But yeah, it's really, I don't care. It could be like somebody who does model trains. If he has his house full of dioramas and model trains and has a model train going around his house like Mr. Rogers, I want to feature that guy. I don't care if he's 100 years old. Like I said, if you're confident and you feel you have a story, but not only that, it's kind of important that, your stuff is neat and you got it at a way where you're happy with, because that's always important. A lot of times folks don't want to be featured. I reach out to them like, well, I'm not ready because I'm not, it's like I don't have it set up in a way where I want it. But, hey, when you're finally ready, hit me up. Because, there's a couple people that I've reached out and they've been like, I'm not ready yet, but it is something that I may want to do in the future. And I don't bug them either. So it's like, I don't like to spam people. I don't like to bother people. And maybe that's kind of that's sort of like one of the things that I'm doing wrong as well. And I'd probably have a lot more viewership, but normally when I post like a teaser for a video, I'll just do it once or twice and then that's it, because like I said, I just kind of want people to sort of discover the channel through word of mouth, or just, like I said, I don't want to bug people. I don't want to lose my current subscribers. I don't want to lose my current followers on Instagram things. But I don't know. I think sooner or later I'm gonna have to grow out of that if I want this channel to grow. But yeah, look, just hit me up. Let me see what you have. You may have a pile of crap, but your story may be incredible. And if you have an incredible story, because that pile of crap, it may be a pile of crap to us, but not to you. And if your story is very compelling and your story can kind of make people appreciate that pile of crap, then I want to feature you.
You heard it here. Well, those are all my questions. You know, we touched on a lot of the videos that you made this year, but also talked about the generalities of what the channel is and why you do it and what you're hoping to do with it in the future. Thank you for sharing all of those insights with us. And, you know, I hope to be there right by your side as we move forward with it. But from everybody else, you know, thanks for having us along, and we're looking forward to seeing more.
No, and thank you, Travis. Thank you for you know, joining me for the ride, and also just making this you know, it sort of inspires me or just motivates me, just having guys like you involved. It motivates me to keep moving forward. But also thank you for suggesting for doing it this way, because it's a lot easier to kind of have a back and forth and just kind of answering questions from somebody else's perspective as opposed to just kind of trying to wing it and trying to just come up with stuff to say myself. I'm looking forward to just kind of move on, keep moving forward, keep growing, and just kind of keep building and just letting the toy community know, whether you're a collector, an artist, that, you know, you're not alone. There's other people like you. You inspire other people, and you know, just keep doing what you do what makes you happy. And especially, you know, right now it's more important right now than any other time. Thanks again, Travis, for doing this, and folks, thank you once again for joining us, and you know, I'm sure many of us are very happy to say goodbye to 2020. I mean, it's not so much, yeah, I'm not saying goodbye until we're out of all of this, but I think, you know, there's a lot of hope. You know, we've got a lot to look forward to. So, Travis, thank you once again for for doing this and hanging out, and for the wonderful drink, and just a toast to
2021 and beyond.
Yeah, exactly. And
farther we can get away from 2020, the better.
Yeah, exactly. and going back to normal, and just continuing to not go gray. So may those who play never gray. Thank you once again. This is Roger Daniel for the Magnificent World of Toys and
the Enemy Planet.
Where can they find you, by the way?
You can find me on Instagram at the Enemy Planet.
And check him out from time to time, because he does some pretty good pop-up shops and stuff. So take care, ladies and gentlemen, once again. See you soon. Thank you for joining us.